Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Watches TV, where I watch all the television shows, and then I come over here and I talk about them. I watch true crime, all the trending shows on Netflix and Apple and everywhere else, reality TV, and then I come over here and I react to them. You guys let me know what you thought about them in the comment section below, and we kind of have a little conversation about TV. It's a place to come and talk about TV. So if you like to talk about TV, you like to watch TV, then subscribe to my channel and comment on my videos. All right, today I want to talk about the new show that just came out on Netflix. I believe it came out about 2 weeks ago, and it's called Adolescence. It is a 4-part series. Each episode is about an hour long. And let me tell you a little background story on how I found out about the show. I didn't even know that this show had come out on Netflix, and I started having people direct message me about it. So for those of you that do not know, I have a new Instagram associated with this channel. It's just called Peter Watches TV, so you can just go search for Peter Watches TV Instagram. And I put over there on my stories every single day what I'm watching that day, and like what I think about things, all the thumbnails for my videos over here I put up on that Instagram. It's just kind of a place for me to show in real time what I'm watching. So people direct message me all the time about shows they want me to watch, and I always just say I'm adding it to my list, or I've already seen it, or whatever. And I started getting a bunch of messages about this new show on Netflix called Adolescence. And I was like, what is this? I haven't heard anything about it. Then I was talking to my best friend, and my best friend was like, you need to watch this show, Adolescence. She's like, it is superb. It is fantastic. And I was like, well, what's it about? She's like, I don't even want to tell you. She was like, because you just need to go into it and kind of not have any idea what it's about. So I had no idea. I saw the poster for it. In all honesty, when I started it, like, this is how little I even know about it. It's a British show, and I had no idea. I thought it took place, like, in the United States somewhere. I had no idea what this show was about. Just by looking at the poster, I thought that it was going to have something to do with, like, a detention center or something like that. I had no idea. Now, I am going to spoil this because there's a lot of things I need to talk about. So if you haven't watched it yet, and you're going to watch it, or you're planning on watch it, which I would highly recommend, I would definitely highly recommend watching it to any parent out there, no matter how old your children is. I think it is a fantastic show for parents, number one. Number two, I would say it is not a show for children. I think that if older, like, teenagers are going to watch it with their parents, have a conversation about it. It's very graphic in what they discuss. It's not so graphic in what they show, but the discussion is very graphic of the topic. So I would definitely recommend like watching it, like, with a parent, having a conversation about it and things like that. But this is not a show for young kids and things like that. So anyway, so if you're going to watch it, I would probably bow out right now, because I'm going to go through each episode and talk about what I thought of each episode. Okay, so gave you fair warning, all right? Okay, so the show is about this. I believe I have it pulled up right here. I believe he's 13 years old. So the synopsis on Netflix says, a family's world turns upside down when 13-year-old Jamie Miller is arrested for murdering a schoolmate. The charges against their son force them to confront every parent's worst nightmare. Okay, so first of all, one of the things I'm very surprised about is that this is being called a thriller. It starts off and it kind of feels like a thriller, but it is definitely not a thriller. The second thing I am really confused about is that people are commenting, like, on the Netflix Instagram account, when they're showing things about this and stuff. They're like, well, what happened at the end? You never find out who the killer was. Okay, that was not the point of the show. I think people missed the point of the show. The point of the show was not that it's a thriller, it's a mystery, you're trying to figure it out. You know in the first episode who did it. I mean, it's pretty clear in the first episode who did it. The rest of it is how kind of everybody's reacting to it. And to be honest with you, I think we live in this world today where, you know, there's not a lot that we're shocked by anymore. And so we don't just do character studies in shows anymore. People want a thriller. People want something they can figure out. You know, I just got done watching Paradise. I did my reaction to it. I loved it. But it is very much like a whodunit, like whatever. And so I think we go into all these shows thinking we have to piece it apart and figure it out. This is not that, okay? It feels like a thriller when it starts, but it's not. It is a character study of the people that were involved in this horrible situation that happened. And it's all told from the point of view of the family, the friends of the murderer in it. So the first episode is there's these two police officers, detectives, they're sitting outside this house, and they go in like with the SWAT team, they take down the door, and they arrest this 13-year-old in his room. It's interesting because the show starts and ends in the room, and that I've heard the director talk about how that was very deliberate. The other thing that is deliberately done in the show, and the director is somebody that has done a lot of this before in the past, I think the father is played by Stephen Graham, is where each episode is one shot. I wasn't sure of it. I talked about it in my vlog the other day, and I wasn't entirely sure that it was one shot. But then I heard this interview with Stephen Graham, and he was talking about how the whole thing, like they had to do like 14 takes on the final scene to get it all one shot. So it's literally, they do it, they put it together, they learn their lines like a play, and then they shoot it live, and he compares it to a ballet. He said it's like we're shown our movements and like how we're supposed to do it, and then they shoot it live. So each episode is literally like, from the beginning of the episode to the end, it's one shot. It's just absolutely one shot, which is brilliant, okay? Because you're catching like all these nuances. There was a part at the end of it when the mom and the dad are sitting on the bed, and they're talking at the very end about what kind of parents they were. And it was interesting because I didn't think I understood what the dad said, and he gets choked up on his words. It's moments like that that make this very, very real, because they do it all in one shot. And I think that's to capture the real emotion, the real response of how they're acting in that moment. So the first episode is about Jamie. He's a 13-year-old kid that gets arrested and is accused of murdering this girl that he's friendly with, but not really friends, and her name is Katie, and she goes to school with him. So the whole first episode is kind of like them arresting him, taking him to the police department. The family's in like a family room. The dad is like his adult representative, so he comes in for things. And then there's all this stuff that happens with the arrest. At the very end of the episode, the two police detectives come in and they start asking him a lot of questions. He denies, through the whole show, Jamie denies that he does it. I mean, there was never once that Jamie says, yes, I did it. But at the very end, they show this recording that they have from like CCTV, like cameras up, that shows Jamie and this girl getting into a confrontation. And then he's like lunging at her and attacking her. And you can tell from the video, they show the video in the movie. They're showing it on a computer screen, so it's not like right up there, but you can still see that he and the father's reaction to it. This is why I'm kind of surprised that people are like, did he do it? Did he not do it? I mean, in the moment, the father knew that. Even though he says afterwards, he's like, I wanted to believe it, but I knew after seeing the video. Like, I saw the video. The video shows him, like, stabbing this, like, girl repeatedly. So that's how the first episode ends. The second episode is the police detectives going to the school where he was at and like interviewing the friends and things like that. I think this is where people might get confused and think that maybe his friend did it, and they think it's a thriller, and they're trying to like figure out like, well, this is the only thing I think that they messed up with a little bit, because I think they should have made it a little bit clearer. The friend that they interview plays Ryan in the show. He looks very similar to the boy that plays Jamie. He looks very similar to him. There was a moment where I was like, is this a thriller? Like, because at that point, you haven't seen the whole thing. And I was like, is this a thriller? Like, are you not sure if Jamie's really it? And maybe they have the other kid on camera and they think it's him. I think this is where people are confused with the show, because I kind of, for a moment, did too. I kind of thought it. The other reason is that they have this brilliant actress that plays the best friend of the murder victim. And they interview her. Her name's Jade in the movie. And they interview her. It's one of my favorite scenes ever. I think sometimes people forget how kids really talk, you know? And so she's being interviewed, and she's the best friend of this victim. And so there's like this lower class. This is one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. There's this like, so there's like upper class and lower class like teachers, you know, obviously, but there's a lower class teacher from the lower grades that is like showing them around and like helping them interview students. So she introduces herself to Jade. So at the end of it, she starts kind of going, the police officer, the detective, gives him his card, and she like kind of throws it back at him and is like, okay, I don't care. And she's like, you guys don't know how to do your job and whatever. And then she looks at the teacher and she goes, lower class, Miss Lower Class, can I go now? And I was like, this is brilliant writing. Like, this is absolutely brilliant writing. I mean, this is exactly how a kid in that situation would talk, you know? And so, and the teacher's real apologetic to the detectives. But then they have them all go outside for this fire drill. And Jade attacks this Ryan guy, who's one of the closest friends of Jamie. I think that's where people are kind of getting confused, because they're like, is there something more to that? Like, why is she attacking him? Like, is he the murderer? Whatever. I think it kind of throws it off. I don't really know why they did that, because that really has no point to the show. They don't explain it. It doesn't really make any sense in the context of the show, just except for how kids act. So anyway, the second episode is all about the kids. The one detective, his son actually goes to the high school. And you can tell that they don't really have that great of a relationship. But so they say to the classes, like, if you have any information, come forward and tell us. His son comes to him and says, I want to talk to you. And he's talking about these emojis. So this girl had left these emojis on this Jamie's Instagram account. They're going into the social media. And this is where you show like generationally, like, they don't understand what these emojis mean and what these words mean that they're talking about. And so his son explains to him, you're misreading it. Like, you don't understand. They're throwing you off. And he's like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, basically, this kid Jamie was being bullied by these girls. And they talk about this 80-20 thing, where it's that 80% of, it's like this, I guess it's this rule about, like, it's called incel. I didn't really know a lot about it, if you want to know the truth. I looked it up. So here, let me pull what it means, because I want to make sure that I'm not getting it incorrect. But incel, hold on a second, is a term associated with a mostly online subculture of people who define themselves as unable to find a romantic or sexual partner despite desiring one, and who may blame, objectify, and denigrate women and girls as a result. And then they have this thing about 80-20, and it's like something about like 80% of the women. What is the 80-20 rule from Netflix's Adolescence, and how does it relate to it? And it says in here, hold on a second, talking about all this. The 80-20 rule is based on the Pareto principle, which theorizes that roughly 80% consequences come from 20% of causes. It is named after the Italian economist William Pareto, who observed in 1906 that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. But in the show, what they talk about is the incel version of the 80-20 rule is that 80% of women are attracted to the top 20% of men, i.e. the most attractive men, or those who have most traditionally masculine traits, meaning that the majority of women are seeking the top quarter of the men, while other men never get a look in. So what it means is that 80% of the women are looking for men that are in this 20%. If you're not in that 20% of men, you're never going to get a woman. Well, it's this whole discussion that these teenagers are having, these like middle school grade kids are having. And so they go into depth about that, right? And so basically, and the third episode, so his son tells him all about this. The third episode is one shot, and it is all Jamie being interviewed by the psychiatrist. This episode the whole show was difficult to watch, but this episode was so difficult to watch. And the psychiatrist was fantastic in it. This kid that plays this Jamie Miller, apparently this was his first day on set when he shot this scene, okay? I mean, he goes from raging to calm to manipulative with a psychiatrist. It is really scary to watch. And he is brilliant in this role. I was actually talking about this on my vlog. It's interesting, because, back in the day, people like Anna Paquin won for the piano, won an Academy Award. And today we have roles like this. This kid is fantastic in it. Or we have roles like the girl that played, I just watched Station 11, that played Kirsten in it. She was fantastic in it, And we see these kids playing unbelievably. The range of emotion is unbelievable in this scene. And so he goes in and he kind of describes it. And what he says is that this girl, Katie, would have nothing to do with them. They weren't really friends, and she wouldn't have anything to do with them. But supposedly she had this crush on this guy. And so she sent a topless picture to him. And then this kid showed it all over school. Not Jamie, but this other kid at school. And so he saw the pictures of her. And the psychiatrist kind of goes in this whole idea of objectification. And so he really wants to get with her, but everybody's making fun of her at school. And so this is where it's the lacking of emotion. It's I think, 5 years ago we would have said we would have talked about this is a sociopath, this is what. I think it's really a muting of an entire generation of kids that are so muted to anything on any level anymore. I mean, this kid has really no emotion attached to what he did to this girl. And so he's talking about how nobody at the school was talking to her, and so he asked her if she would go to the fair with him. And so the psychiatrist was like, because you liked her? And he was like, no. He was like, because nobody else was going to ask her, so I thought this was my chance. And so she said, so you think this was your chance to get in, basically, Like, she wouldn't have been bothered with you any other time, but now that nobody else is bothered with her, this is your chance. And he's like, yeah. There's no emotion attached to it whatsoever. It's so sad to see this 13-year-old kid that's like literally just like no emotion, flat. I mean, he shows emotion in the scene. I mean, he rages, he gets angry, but he really never shows any empathy or sympathy for his victim whatsoever. Whatsoever. Not even the fact that this girl that he went to school with is dead. The only the sympathy and the only tears he ever shares are kind of like for himself in this situation. So that's the third episode. It was extremely difficult to watch. And you can tell the psychiatrist that's doing the psych eval on him for the court. At one point, he says something. This is where it was interesting to me that people were like, who did it? Because there's a part in the episode where she asks him, I can't remember what she asked him, but he gets so angry. I mean, you can speculate about all kinds of things in the show. The last episode, somebody sprays this word on the dad's work truck, which apparently means the P word. And so then you could allege like the dad was doing things to the kids, but I don't think that's really what they're trying to show in the show. And so anyway, she's asking these questions and he gets really, really heated and he throws the chair and he says, like, he pushes the chair and throws it. And he's like, something about, I can't remember exactly how he says it, but he says something about like, you just want to get me to talk about what I did. And then he's like, I didn't say that, because he realizes that he messed up. That's him admitting right there. It's him confirming that he was the one that murdered her. There's no other person that could have done it in the show. I mean, his friends, but his friends like walked away. The friends even have this conversation where they're like, do you think he did it? And the one friend's like, yeah, I think he did. And so like the conversation, you can tell from that, would not be the conversation they would have if they were, if they knew that one of them had done it. It would have been a completely different conversation. I'm not saying that he would say, oh yeah, I did it, but like it would have been a different conversation. So anyway, that's the third episode, is the whole psychiatric evaluation, which it's super powerful. And I will say this, I mean, I get bored in a lot of shows, at least at some point I get kind of bored. Even in Paradise, which I love, that I just watched, I got a little bored. This show, I never got bored of. I mean, I never once. Like, each episode is so completely different. So the fourth episode is 13 months later since the arrest. And it's at the house, and it's the dad's birthday, and he's played by Stephen Graham. And the dad's kind of always held on to hope. You can kind of tell in the moment that the mom has kind of resigned herself to the fact, and the sister's resigned herself to the fact that he did it. The sister even makes a comment at some point, and she's like, he'll always be my brother. Like, not like he'll always be my brother, I love him, but always like, that's how I'll be identified, always, as like the brother of Jamie Miller. She says that at one point, and she's in college. So they wake up and it's the dad's birthday. I think it's his 50th birthday. Well, the sister goes outside and she sees that they've spray painted this word on his car. So then it goes into like this manic mode, and the dad's like gonna go to he pulls them all in the car and he's like, we're gonna go to the store, like this, like, you know, just, I don't know, hardware store, and get stuff to scrub it off, because he can't scrub it off. He ends up getting paint. Yells at these kids in the parking lot that are basically egging him on about his kid. Somebody stops him in the store and is like, we're on the side of your kid. I mean, it's a lot, right? He ends up throwing this paint on the truck and driving home, and like the whole tone of the day has changed. And while they're driving home, Jamie calls them and says that he's going to change his plea to guilty, that there's no reason not to. And the dad is just checked out at this point. He's like, the mom kind of steps in. She's like, you're here too? And he's like, oh, I thought it was just between me and dad. And the dad is just crushed, because he's like, it's him having to accept the reality of what he saw on the tape on day one. Like, he's known it all along, but now he has to face it because his son's going to plead guilty. The mom and his sister, the mom says, this is for the best. Like, this is for the best. And so there's like this half an hour scene of the mom and dad in the bedroom, because they talk about getting Chinese food and they're going to go take these pictures and stuff like that. And that's what they're going to do for his birthday. He's trying to like cheer him up on the way there. But on the way back, he's just completely distraught. And so they're standing in the bedroom, and his wife has given him this shirt, and he's changed into it to look nice to go. And it is one of the hardest half an hour of any movie that I have ever watched in my 52 years of being on this planet. It is these parents, because at this point I was like, you know, it's interesting that they're not really talking about the victim's parents, and they're not really talking about the victim's family. It's all from a completely different point of view than we really never see, you know? We really never do. The last time I saw a movie like this is We Need to Talk About Kevin, which was with Tilda Swinton. If you guys remember that movie, it was about like a school situation. But that was the last time that we've ever seen like how a family is affected by this. And so it's a completely different perspective where we go into these settings expecting to see this distraught family because they lost a daughter and her point of view and all that, the mother or father's point of view, the friends, all kinds of stuff. You don't really see that. It's mostly all from the point of view of this kid that committed this murder. And so the parents sit there and you can tell the dad is like, they go into this whole like blaming thing about being bad parents. And then the daughter comes in and he's like, how did we do so well with her basically, but so bad with him? And they talk about what did we not look for? What did we not see? How did we not know? And they're like crying the whole time. And you can tell they're like blaming themselves the entire time. Okay, they've been blaming themselves for 13 months about what they didn't see, what they didn't know. Were they not good enough parents? You know, at one point the dad, this was really hard. The dad says, you know, my dad beat me. He basically says his dad beat him. He goes, I wanted to be different. I wanted to be better. And he goes, and I thought I was. And so they go in this whole thing and talk about it. And then the daughter comes in, they basically talk about having breakfast. It's like late in the day at this point. They haven't had breakfast. And so then the dad walks back into his son's bedroom, which you can tell that he doesn't really go into that much. And it's very much a child's bedroom. Like you can tell, it's a child's bedroom. There's like toys, like, I mean, it's a 13-year, I mean, I don't know, my nephew's 12, and he doesn't even have some toys like that. There was like a stuffed animal tucked into the bed, and there's like, you know, little toys around here and whatever. I mean, it's a kid's bedroom. And so he goes in there, and I think that's where, for me, it's like you've watched 4 episodes of this now, and it's like the gravity of the situation, of the fact that this 13-year-old murdered this girl, stabbed her in plain daylight, murdered her, that he's a kid. I mean, this is something we talked about, you know, 30 years ago, kids killing kids. And, you know, here it is. And the dad is just like, has this like, he kisses a teddy bear and he tucks it in basically like he's talking to his son that his son used to be. You can kind of tell. And then he like walks out, and that's how the show ends. It was fantastically done. It was absolutely fantastically done. And I think that why so many people, like, you know, I have this person that reached out to me, and she said that she's in the UK, and this is something that's going on there right now, this discussion about incels and, like, masculinity within boys. You know, it's interesting because as a gay kid growing up, you know, I didn't come out until I was 18 years old, but I knew inside that I was gay. And this whole idea of, like, who's more masculine than who else and whatever was, I think, like, the worst thing anybody wants to be. Well, I don't know, I can't speak to today, but when I was growing up, the worst thing anybody wants to be before the age of like 25 is gay. You just don't. You don't want to be called that. My life was miserable growing up, right? You know, in fact, years ago, I can remember having a conversation with my best friend and my cousin about, we had seen all these like kids that were bullied, that were taking their lives. And this is a different story. This is a kid that supposedly is like bullying and being bullied, that is violent in behavior, that's homicidal. And I can remember saying, I don't even remember that like being an option, like even going through my head. And I think that there's a lot of different reasons for that. But, you know, it's interesting, this idea of like this masculinity and things that we talk about. I remember talking to many of my friends when I was in high school. They were all girls. I was just telling a friend of mine the story the other day that I can remember talking to some of my friends about like kids being mean to me in high school. My girlfriends knew, like they stuck up for me. There's one friend of mine said, you have no idea how cruel girls are. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, girls in high school. I mean, this was long before the Mean Girls movie had come out and all that kind of stuff. She goes, girls in high school are ruthless. She said, they will stand in the locker room and they will make fun of your chest. They will make fun of your acne, your hair, what you have on. They are ruthless. She was like, teenage girls are ruthless. And I think that was like my little bit of insight into a different perspective of what high school would be like. Because for me, it was just being called names and whatever, right? So it's interesting, but I had this woman reach out to me, and when I posted I was watching it, and she said that she's in the UK, and her son's about the same age, and you know, she said to me, the statement was so profound. She said, I have often worried, and I keep my son home because I'm often worried about what somebody would do to him if he left, and I didn't know where he was. She said, but not until I watched this show did I think that, you know, that he might be the one that's doing something to somebody else. She's like, it totally, like, you know, it like really, I needed to see this movie. It's interesting because it's like this theory, you know, like I can remember, like my mom and like my dad, for those of you that don't know, I got sober when I was 22 and a half years old. So I got sober in 1994. And before that, I can remember like my parents being like, my dad was pretty savvy about it, but my mom, I think, was always wanting to blame somebody else and would be like, oh, that's a bad friend, or you don't need to hang around them. And I remember saying to my mom one time, did you ever think that maybe I'm the bad friend, that nobody should be around, that I'm the one getting people to do stuff, that I'm the one that's being like, oh, we should do this, we should do that? Like, in high school, I was that kid, right? Like, and so I think parents have such a hard time seeing really the truth of who their kids are. And I think this show, you can't look away from it. It's fantastically done. So anyway, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.